So, as one example, I'll present to you today a combined open-cut underground operation that had quite complicated stockpiling requirements. This operation is located in South Australia. It's not far from the well-known Olympic Dam operation. It was originally planned at 8 million tons per annum. It's now up around 9.5 million tons. It has its own concentrator on site, and it produces a copper gold concentrate. Mining started in 2006, and the first concentrate was shipped in 2009. The final planned pit is a reasonably large one, 1.4 by 2.1 kilometers, and about half kilometer deep. Quite interesting is the fact that underneath this there are substantial underground reserves, and they're finding more reserves all the time. This is dated already. This is 2009, but this resource was estimated at about 190 million tons, running around 1.3% copper and 0.5% gold and 3.1 grams per ton. Excuse me, half a gram gold and about 3.1 grams silver. And again, substantial resources underneath the pit. So this is South Australia. It's no more inspiring than the north of Chile. You can see the pit in its initial stage of construction. It's considerably bigger than that now. It was considerably bigger by the time I got involved in the study. Substantial surface area for placement of stockpiles. So volume of stockpiles or number of stockpiles is not a consideration. And the concentrator is on site. A long section of the deposit, and we're looking at the existing pit, the final pit limits, substantial underground reserves, of course different levels of measured and inferred reserves, and then off to the sides, some additional underground resources. So the scope of the project in terms of the application I'll be showing you was as follows. First of all, it was a strategic review of the project. So we weren't looking at very detailed planning of the pit. We were only looking at the typical scheduling of benches within stages. So the scheduling was based on the open cut by bench stage and cutoff. So there was a question of what the appropriate cutoff for the pit was, and we used a wide range of cutoffs. I think there was there were close to 20 cutoffs. Substantial stockpiling, and this included very large reserves of inventory that are already on the ground by the time the study took place. There were standing stockpiles of high-grade material, low-grade material, high hardness, low hardness, high uranium, high fluorine. Of course, problems with milling of fluorine because of recoveries, and there was a limit on the uranium that could be in the reserves, in the concentrate. Quite a stringent limit, as you can imagine. The mining strategies also include the possibility, the question, of whether two other underground resources should come into production. So there was a question of whether the project should include these underground research sources. If it did include the underground resources, then when should they come into production, and at what rate of production should they enter into the operation? What rate should they feed the mill? And then, of course, there was a typical sensitivity analysis associated with metal prices and exchange rates. So, unfortunately, since I'm running off a pen drive, I can't actually show you the model in any more detail than this. But this is a view of the open pit, 4 stages. The principal stage, the first stage is already largely exhausted by the time the study took place. Second stage, partially exhausted, and then a third and fourth stage in stripping. Underneath this is shown one example of the underground resources at one of the cutoffs. And this is probably a $70 per ton cutoff. And you can see the development openings, so the access openings associated with that deposit in the life of business optimization package that was used in this study for the optimization and strategic analysis. Those underground resources shown at a given cutoff with a given access strategy. Again, shown at a $70 net smelter revenue cutoff in more detail in the Life of Business Optimization package. Stockpiling strategy was quite complicated. This is only showing 2 pits, the main surface pit and the main underground pit. There are actually, main underground mine, underground mine, surface mine. There was actually another underground mine, but it's not shown here. Quite a few different stockpiles. Some of these stockpiles, such as the one shown here, were different material types which had already been established, were simply feeding the mill. Other stockpiles were actually being built, and they were based on different rock types, different ore grades, uranium and fluorine levels. So the question was how to schedule these 2 underground operations with the open pit, interacting with a multitude of different stockpiles in order to control fluorine levels, hardnesses, uranium levels. A very good example of the type of application which just simply can't be handled by existing life of mine planning software, optimization software. So again, what were the objectives of the project? The objective was to optimize the strategy for the project to balance grade and recovery against mill throughput rates while maintaining minimal levels of fluorine and uranium in the concentrate. And of course, doing so in a way that would maximize both the value of the project and the recovery of the reserves. Several strategies explored include blending of the pit with stockpile inventories and with underground production. Stockpile planning that would allow us to place the right amount of material in the mill at the right time so that we could keep the mill full and so that we could limit the penalties associated with fluorine and with uranium. And then determining the start of production from the underground mines and, of course, the rate of stripping from stages 3 and 4 of the open pit. And then finally, trying to determine the choice of the best cutoff, and with that, the appropriate reserve for the underground mines. And in that, those reserves would vary in terms of fluorine, uranium, copper grades, gold grades as a function of the cutoff, as well as the tonnage. So I won't be able to demonstrate the model to you today, but I can show you typical results that we produced. So many different options were considered, and within each option there would be 3 different scenarios. There would be a base case scenario, a worst case, a best case, and one other in terms of what prices and exchange rates would be. So overall, these were studied to determine the various options shown here in terms of exchange rates, prices, alternative capacities, alternative times for starting the underground deposit are shown, and then we generate the optimization for each one of these options. We look at the options across each base case and try to get an understanding of what the associated NPV would be for the options. Likewise, we look at each one of the scenarios, see how much that NPV can vary by from one option, from one scenario to the next. We can look at details such as should we have 3 primary shovels, 2 primary shovels, 4 primary shovels, and you can see the results show which one. We can look at a base case where we just have open cut versus a base case where we have open cut and underground mining to see what the value added is of the underground mining, etc. In terms of the detailed outputs, they're quite typical for this type of project. We can look at production profiles for the stages from the open pit. We can look at that in terms of the ore being produced by the different pits, the low-grade profile of material being scheduled for the lixification or for the stockpiles. We can look at ore waste profiles, schedules of the benches over time. We can look at concentrate profiles over time, where they're coming from the open pit or from the underground. We can look at whether we're meeting our fluorine limits or our uranium limits. We can see if we're meeting our mill capacity, which we do it every year, and where the material comes from that fills the mill in a year-by-year basis. And then, of course, we can associate this with paid metals over time, net cash over time, etc. So any type of output that we're interested in, any type of sensitivity analysis or option analysis that we want to do, we can accomplish this using this linear programming, mixed energy programming approach. Thank you very much.